The afternoon sun bled over the Nevada desert highway, turning the asphalt into molten glass. The Iron Vultures motorcycle club had stopped near an old service station. 10 bikes gleaming like steel beasts, their chrome catching the dying light. Diesel fumes and laughter filled the air. Then came the scream. Before we start this story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Also, please subscribe to the channel. It will help us to bring you more inspiring stories every day. A boy, no older than 8, burst from behind the rusted pumps, stumbling, his voice raw. "Please, they're beating my dad." His words cracked through the sound of revving engines. Every biker froze. His face was streaked with dust and fear, his small hands trembling as he pointed toward a row of rundown motels across the road. For a moment no one moved. Then one man stepped forward, broad shoulders, grizzled beard, tattoos fading under sunburned skin. He removed his helmet slowly. "Where?" he asked. The boy could barely speak, just pointed again. The man's name was Jax Rourke, road captain of the Iron Vultures. Without another word, he swung his leg over his Harley, the engine roaring like a promise. "Mount up," he growled. "We ride." The bikes thundered to life, 10 engines shaking the sand loose from the roadside signs. Jax led the pack, his eyes narrowed behind tinted goggles. The boy, Eli, sat clinging to his waist, his tiny hands gripping the leather vest that bore the words, "Ride hard, stand tall." The convoy tore down the stretch of cracked road toward the shanty row of motels at the edge of town. As they approached, Jack saw 2 men outside a doorway, both yelling, one swinging a belt. The sound of crying drifted out from inside. Eli's voice broke. "That's them!" Jack signaled. The riders fanned out like wolves. Dust swirled as they halted, boots hitting ground in unison. Without hesitation, Jack strode forward. "Hey!" His voice hit the air like a hammer. The men turned, sunburned, mean-eyed, drunk. "Ain't your business," one slurred, raising the belt again. Jax's stare could have cut steel. "Kid made it mine." The motel's silence shattered as Jax moved in. The drunk swung first, wild, uncoordinated. Jack sidestepped, caught his wrist mid-air and drove him into the wall. The impact rattled loose plaster. The second man lunged, but another biker, Reaper, tall and tattooed head to toe, caught him mid-stride with a forearm that sent him sprawling. Inside, Eli's father lay bleeding on the floor, his nose broken, shirt torn open. A woman knelt beside him, crying silently. Jax crouched, helping the man sit upright. "Who are they?" he asked. The woman stammered. "Landlords," said he owed rent. "They came to collect." Jax's jaw clenched. He glanced at Reaper, who was holding one of the attackers by the collar. "Call it even," Jack said. "You don't touch this family again." The man sneered. "You can't tell me." A sharp crack cut him off, Reaper's fist. Silence followed. Police sirens screamed in the distance. The Iron Vultures didn't run. They stood still, a wall of leather and steel under the red light of sunset. When the cruisers pulled up, the officers froze at the sight, 10 bikers motionless, calm, surrounding a trembling family. Jax raised his hands. "They were beating him when we got here." The officers looked from him to the woman to Eli. She nodded, her voice shaking. "They saved us." Within minutes, the officers cuffed the 2 men and hauled them away. Eli's father, Mark, looked at Jax with disbelief. "You didn't have to get involved," he said weakly. Jax shrugged. "Yeah, I did." When the police left, Eli stood beside Jax, staring up. "You're not bad guys?" he asked softly. Jax looked down, a faint smile breaking the roughness of his face. "Nah, kid, we just look that way." Night settled slow over the desert. The bikers lingered outside the motel, engines cooled, cigarettes glowing like fireflies. Mark sat on the steps, his arm around Eli. "I don't know how to thank you," he murmured. Jack shook his head. "You already did. You raised a kid who ran for help instead of hiding. The club's treasurer, Doc, handed Mark an envelope. "For the rent." "Don't argue." Mark opened his mouth to protest, but Jax's stare silenced him. "We take care of our own. Today you're one of us." The boy hugged Jax's leg, eyes bright. "Will I ever ride one of those?" he asked, pointing to the Harleys lined under the neon sign. Jax chuckled, rubbing his head. "When you earn your road, kid." As the Iron Vultures rode off into the moonlight, dust trailing behind, the mother whispered to her son, "Those men. They're not devils, Eli. They're angels in leather." By morning, the town buzzed with stories. "Hellsangels saved a family," one paper read, though the photo showed the Iron Vultures. To most people, it was all the same. At the sheriff's office, Sheriff Wayne Porter tossed the article onto his desk. "Jax Rourke," he muttered. "That man's trouble wrapped in good intentions." A deputy leaned against the doorframe. "Still, they saved him, Sheriff. Folks are saying the bikers are heroes." Porter sighed, his lined face weary. "I've known Rourke since before the ink dried on his first tattoo. He don't play savior without reason." Across town, Jax parked his Harley outside a rundown repair garage. Inside, Mark worked quietly, one eye swollen but open. "I owe you more than I can pay," Mark said. Jax shrugged. "Just fix my clutch when I need it." But as Jax turned to leave, his eyes caught something on the wall, a framed military photo. Mark in uniform beside two other men. One of them was Porter. That night, the Iron Vultures gathered around a bonfire behind their clubhouse, a converted grain depot outside Lone Ridge. Sparks floated upward, the night air heavy with the smell of oil and pine. Reaper leaned forward, breaking the silence. "That kid's dad. You seen that photo?" Jax nodded slowly. "Yeah, he served with Porter. Same unit by the look." Doc blew smoke toward the stars. "Could explain why the sheriff's been sniffing around." Jax's jaw tightened. "Maybe. Or maybe Mark's past ain't as clean as it looks." He stared into the fire, the flickering light carving deep lines into his weathered face. For years, Jax had led men who lived by their own law, but never had a child's cry pulled him this far into someone else's war. Across the lot, the sound of Eli's laughter drifted from where he played with the club's mechanic, Tiny. Innocent, free. Jax muttered under his breath, "We protect our own, even when we don't know why." The next morning, Sheriff Porter arrived at the clubhouse. Dust clung to his boots, and the weight of authority rode on his shoulders. The bikers looked up from their bikes, silent, watchful. Jax stepped out, wiping grease from his hands. "Morning, Sheriff." "Morning, Rourke," Porter replied, eyes scanning the scene. "You planning to explain why you played hero last night?" Jax smirked. "Didn't know helping a kid needed a permit." Porter's jaw flexed. "That man, Mark Benson, you know who he really is?" Jax shook his head. "A father," Porter's voice dropped. "He's also my former sergeant. Went missing 5 years ago after a weapons deal gone wrong. We found bodies, but not him. Someone covered it up." The words hit Jax like a slug. "You saying he's dirty?" "I'm saying he's not who that kid thinks he is," Porter said, turning to leave. "Be careful who you save, Jax. Some ghosts don't deserve resurrection." That night, rain clouds teased the desert horizon but never broke. Jax sat alone beside his Harley, rolling a cigarette he wouldn't smoke. Mark's words from the motel replayed in his head. "They came to collect." "Collect what?" Doc approached quietly. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "Yeah," Jax muttered. "That maybe we didn't stop a beating. Maybe we interrupted a debt." Doc crouched beside him. "You gonna dig?" Jax exhaled. "I always do." He rode out under the moonlight toward the motel, the road stretching endless and silent. When he reached it, he found the door ajar, lights off, the place empty. No Mark, no Eli, no trace but a single torn patch from a duffel bag, a military insignia, faded but real. Jax pocketed it, unease tightening in his gut. He whispered to the night, "What the hell did you drag us into, soldier?" Morning, the Iron Vultures assembled, the desert wind snapping through their cuts. Jax laid the patch on the table. "Mark's gone. Packed up overnight?" Reaper frowned. "You think he ran?" "He's hiding," Jax said. "Or being hunted." Doc unfolded an old map pointing to a canyon road north of town. "Old military depot's up there. Long abandoned. If he's ex-service, he knows it." Jax nodded. "Then that's where we start." The engines roared to life, a mechanical symphony that rolled across the plain. The club moved as one, chrome flashing under the morning sun. At the edge of the desert, a dust trail rose behind them like smoke from a fuse. Whatever lay ahead, truth, danger, or both, Jax felt it in his bones. This wasn't over. And somewhere in that vast silence, a boy named Eli waited for someone to find out why his father had really been beaten. By dusk, the Iron Vultures reached the canyon road. The air grew colder, shadows stretching long over cracked rock. Ahead stood an abandoned military depot, half-buried bunkers, rusted fences, silence thick as smoke. Jax killed the engine first, raising a hand for the others to stop. Only the sound of cooling metal filled the air. They dismounted quietly, spreading out like soldiers who'd done this before. Doc whispered, "You sure he's here?" Jax nodded toward faint footprints in the dust, 2 sizes. "One large, one small." "Eli," Jax murmured. They followed the prints to a bunker door, half open. Inside, a single lantern flickered. Mark sat against the wall, pistol resting across his lap. Eli slept beside him, clutching a worn, stuffed bear. When Jax stepped in, Mark didn't flinch. "You shouldn't have come," he said. His voice carried the weight of war and regret. "Kid's scared," Jax replied. "So am I. Tell me what's real before others get hurt." Mark's eyes were hollow, bloodshot. "You think I was some hero?" he rasped. "I wasn't. We ran weapons for a contractor overseas. Stuff never meant to see daylight. When we found out it was going to cartels instead of troops, I tried to blow the whistle." He looked down at his shaking hands. "They called it treason. Porter was my CO. He buried the report. Said it was above our pay grade." Jax's brow furrowed. "So the men who beat you?" "Private contractors," Mark said. "Hired muscle sent to clean the mess. My family was the warning." Silence. Only Eli's soft breathing broke it. Jax leaned back, fury simmering behind calm eyes. "You ran because you thought they'd kill him next." Mark nodded. "And now you're in it." Jax stood. "Then we ride through it." Mark's gaze lifted, half disbelief, half gratitude. "Why help me?" Jax looked at Eli sleeping. "Because that boy ran toward us, not away. That means something." Just before dawn, engines echoed faintly in the canyon. Jax stiffened. Reaper crouched by the bunker window. "Who we got company?" Headlights cut through the dust. 3 black SUVs crawling along the ridge. Jax moved fast. Grabbing Eli, handing him to Doc. "Keep him safe." Mark loaded his pistol, shoulders tense. "They found me," Jax smirked. "Then let's give them a welcome." The first SUV screeched to a halt, men spilling out armed with batons and tasers. They moved military tight, sweeping the area. Jax and Reaper emerged from the shadows, silent as smoke. The first man dropped before he could shout, hit square in the chest. Gunfire erupted, muffled, sharp. The canyon became chaos. Inside the bunker, Eli clung to Doc's vest, trembling. "Will they hurt my dad again?" Doc smiled faintly. "Not while those engines still run, kid." Outside, Jax charged into the dust storm, fists and fury turning night into a battlefield. When the smoke cleared, silence fell heavy. 2 SUVs burned, orange light dancing off the rock walls. Jax limped toward Mark, blood trailing from a cut on his cheek. "We're not ghosts yet," he muttered. Mark knelt beside a fallen attacker and pulled a badge from his vest. "Government issue." "They're not contractors," he whispered. "They're feds. Jax frowned. So Porter sent them, Mark nodded. He thinks I'm a loose end. Jax's mind raced. Helping Mark had crossed from mercy into rebellion. Reaper tossed his helmet aside. What now, boss? Jax looked at Eli, sleeping safe in Doc's arms. We finish what he started. No one buries truth in our town. He turned to Mark. You ready to face him? Mark stared at the canyon fire reflecting in his son's face. Not for me, he said softly. For him. Jax nodded. Then saddle up. We're taking this ride to the law. The sun rose over Lone Ridge like a blade of gold splitting night apart. 10 bikes lined the highway, their riders battered but unbroken. Mark rode behind Jax, Eli in front of him, tiny hands gripping the tank. Ahead, the sheriff's office waited, a fortress of false justice. Jax's voice thundered through his helmet comms. No weapons unless they draw first. We're not here to fight, we're here to finish. The townsfolk gathered as the roar of engines filled the streets. Curtains shifted. Cameras lifted. When they parked outside the station, Porter stood on the steps, hat low, hand resting on his holster. Jax killed his engine, removing his helmet slowly. The silence was electric. You should have stayed gone, Porter said coldly. Jax took a step forward, eyes locked on him. You should have stayed honest. Behind him, Eli's small voice trembled through the air. Please, don't hurt my dad again. And just like that, every gun lowered, because innocence spoke louder than power ever could. The air inside the sheriff's office was thick with tension. The Iron Vultures stood shoulder to shoulder, a wall of leather and silence. Porter's hand hovered near his holster. You think you can intimidate me, Rourke? Jack stepped forward, laying a folded document on the desk. Mark's report. The one you buried. He kept a copy. Porter's face twitched. He opened it, scanning the pages, contract numbers, signatures, proof. His voice trembled. You have no idea what you're stepping into. Jax leaned closer, voice low. We're stepping where decent men stopped. Mark approached, placing a trembling hand on the desk. You framed me, Wayne. You let them kill innocent people. Porter's jaw tightened, but his eyes flickered with guilt. You think the government cares about your conscience? Jax tapped the desk. Maybe not, but the people watching out there do. Outside, a crowd gathered, phones raised, truth waiting to break free. A single gunshot shattered the silence. Everyone froze. Porter's pistol smoked in his trembling hand, but the bullet hadn't hit Mark. It grazed Jax's arm as he shielded him. The bikers surged forward, but Jax barked, "No!" He stood tall, blood dripping down his leather sleeve. You're done, Wayne. The deputies, shocked, moved in, wresting the gun from Porter. One of them, young, wide-eyed, looked at Jax and said quietly, He's right. It's over. Outside, the crowd erupted as Porter was led away in cuffs, shouting about orders and cover-ups no one cared to hear anymore. Mark rushed to Jax, pressing a rag to the wound. You didn't have to take that bullet, Jax grinned faintly. Wasn't my first. Won't be my last. Eli stood watching, wide-eyed, whispering, You saved him again. Jax looked down, his rough hand resting on the boy's shoulder. That's what we do, kid. Ride for what's right. Days later, Lone Ridge was different. News vans rolled through town, headlines blazing. Sheriff arrested in federal corruption probe. The Iron Vultures had vanished from sight, leaving only tire marks in the dust. But at the edge of town, inside a small workshop, Mark and Eli rebuilt a battered Harley together. Jax's jacket hung on the wall, patched, torn and signed in black ink, for the boy who never ran away. Every Sunday, the rumble of engines could still be heard from the canyon road. The club always rode past the workshop, never stopping, just honking twice, once for the father who stood up, once for the child who believed. Eli would run outside, wave wildly, and they'd salute in return. In that simple gesture, the town remembered something pure, Sometimes the ones branded as outlaws carry the most law in their hearts. Weeks turn to months. The Iron Vultures kept their distance but never forgot. One evening Jax rode alone along the ridge, sunset bleeding gold across the sand. His patched vest fluttered in the wind, one arm still wrapped in a bandage. He stopped at the old service station where it had all begun, the same cracked pavement, the same fading sign. As the sun dipped, a small figure appeared down the road, Eli on a tiny bicycle, chasing the wind. Jax laughed quietly, shaking his head. The kid stopped beside him, panting. "My dad says thank you." Jax reached into his pocket, pulled out a small metal keychain shaped like angel wings. "Give him this," he said softly. "Tell him we all ride for something." The boy nodded, eyes bright. "What do you ride for?" Jax looked out across the endless horizon. "For the ones no one else will." A year later, the Iron Vultures clubhouse bore a new mural, a child's drawing painted larger than life. It showed a row of bikes, a small boy, and a man kneeling beside him. Above it were 5 words, hand-painted by Doc himself: "Not devils, just guardians in leather." Visitors who passed through town often stopped to stare, some in awe, some in silence. Eli and Mark lived quietly now, the past buried but not forgotten. Every now and then, when the rumble of engines echoed through the valley, Eli would look up and whisper, "They're watching," and somewhere beyond the desert line, Jax Rourke would smile beneath his helmet, throttle twisting as he vanished into dust and sunlight. Another ride, another story, the kind no one would believe, until they saw it themselves. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you that courage still roams the open road, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to our channel. Because out there, between leather and steel, live the hearts that refuse to turn away.